Hi everyone, this is Chancey Young, and I'm going to be presenting on historical figures that are important to the history and present day of the United States. So this is a spotlight on minority figures in American history, and I decided to tighten it down a little bit more and do female minority figures in our history. So I'm going to apologize now. I am getting over a cold, so this is going to sound a little weird, but we're going to get through it. So first, I'd like to talk about Ida B. Wells. So Ida Wells was born July 1862 in Holly Springs, Mississippi. She was born into slavery in the South, but was freed by the Emancipation Proclamation, as we all know. After she was freed, she did lose most of her family, but she worked to support her surviving siblings. She co-owned and wrote for the Memphis Free Speech and highlighted newspaper. So she wrote and focused a lot on activism, and she was really looking at the state of the world around her when she was writing. She also taught elementary school, and her writing got her in some hot water. She wrote about and criticized the state of black schools, because at the time the schools were segregated. She wrote about the state of the black schools she was working in, and that her friends and family members were going to school in, and the school board dismissed her. They fired her because of her writing. So, important things that Ida did for us. She researched and looked into lynching in the United States. This is one of the big topics that she wrote about a lot. So she published pamphlets researching and displaying these horrors that were happening in the South, and she was trying to get people to understand what was going on, and it wasn't as plain-faced as it was perceived to be. It wasn't as simple a issue as people were thinking. She exposed how barbaric these things were, and they looked at how it was used to intimidate and oppress African Americans in the South, as opposed to just protecting the whites, as they claimed they were doing. So actually, on the last page, this is a picture of one of the pamphlets. So this is the Southern Horrors Lynch Laws in all its phases. This was one of the first pamphlets that she published on the topic. She also published the Red Record, which is another pamphlet that went into describing lynching in the United States. So she saw herself as researching and presenting research, and these were research papers. They were not just opinion pieces. They were very well thought out. She went on speaking tours in Britain. She went overseas, and while she was over there speaking to try and bring to light these atrocities in other countries, hoping that they would be able to do more and see and recognize the horrors that were happening in the South, she was also asked to write for a newspaper. So she was one of the first African American women to write for a predominantly white mainstream media, and this newspaper. She was also very active in women's rights and women's suffrage movement, and she established and then later had many organizations named after her for her involvement. So next, we can never skip over Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman, we all know very well, but when going through this, I found I learned a lot more than I thought. I thought I knew everything I could know, but I did not. So this is one of the earliest pictures that we have of Harriet Tubman, which is actually quite astounding due to her life. So she was born into slavery in Maryland. She was originally named Araminta Harriet Ross, and her nickname was Minty. So she actually changed her name to Harriet around the time that she got married to John Tubman. I'm presuming, and others have put forth, that she was probably trying to honor her mother, whose name was Harriet. She escaped to the north in 1849. Her husband at the time, John Tubman, decided to stay behind. He did not elect to go with her. So in 1869, Harriet remarried and married a Civil War veteran named Nelson Davis, and they adopted a baby girl. So, important things that Harriet Tubman did during her life. She made 19 trips on the Underground Railroad. She's very famous for these. Guided more than 300 people, including her parents and several siblings. And she earned the nickname Moses for her leadership at the time. She rerouted paths based on the changing political climate of the time. She worked very hard to make sure everyone made it to safety. It was a very difficult time for them to make these treks. Very amazing hardships that she went through. She also, which was a surprise to me, I did not know this originally, worked for the Union Army during the Civil War. She worked as a cook, a nurse, and then eventually became an armed scout and a spy. So she worked as a spy for the Union. And she was one of the first women to lead an armed expedition in war. There were many times people jokingly called her General Tubman, General Harriet Tubman. So she guided a raid. She liberated more than 700 slaves. She was a very strong and powerful woman. She did not stop for anything. So she was very active throughout her whole life. Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison was born in 1931 in Ohio. Her original birth name was Chloe Anthony Warford, but she had it changed. She attended Howard University. She majored in English. She minored in classics. She was very into reading and writing. She was always very advanced her whole life. She graduated from high school with honors, so she really knew what she wanted to do. And she did not really know or see racism in her life. She didn't see that separation or divide because she was in a mixed community. She didn't really notice it because she might have been the only black girl in first grade, but she was the only one who could actually read. So she did not see this and experience the same childhood that everyone else did at the time. She received her master's from Cornell University and became a professor, first at the Texas Southern University, and later went on to teach in Princeton University. Her first novel, It's the Bluest Eyes, was published in 1970. So, she wrote many, many novels. They were all include very epic themes, very rich in language, and she had very detailed, rich African American characters, and she told their stories with such passion. She received the Nobel Prize in Literature, so she was the first African American woman to be selected for this prize, which was a great accomplishment. She also received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2012, of course, and one of the books that she received one of the higher awards for was Beloved. This is a very interesting and heartfelt topic. The main character is a former slave who had decided to kill her children rather than see them become enslaved. So it was a very touching and hard topic that she breathed life into. She received the Pulitzer Prize for fiction in 1988 for this novel. So she wrote amazing characters and further advanced African American women in literature. Katherine Johnson. This face might be familiar. Katherine Johnson is also included recently in a movie, Hidden Figures, so her life will be very familiar. So she was very, very advanced from a young age. She was born in August 1918, and she started high school at the age 10. And by age 18, she graduated from college with a bachelor's degree in science in mathematics and French. So she had 2 bachelor's degrees, dual majors, when she was just a teenager. So she was very, very smart. She started teaching right out of college. She worked at a public school. Of course, I think that seems like a waste of her talent. She seems very smart. While she was teaching, she got married. They had children. She decided to go back to college. She went back to graduate school. She's one of the first 3 black students to integrate the West Virginia Graduate School. She went back. She didn't stay very long, but she did eventually decide that she wanted to do something more than just teaching, and she applied. I believe she had to apply twice before she was accepted and hired to work at the All-Black West Area Computing section of the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. So this is the early foundings pre-NASA. So she worked there for many, many years and was a human computer. She was smarter than the earliest computers, the earliest calculators. So she did the math. In 1960, she co-authored a report with equations well past my ability to understand, describing orbital spaceflight. And this is the first time a woman had actually been allowed to receive credit for co-authoring a report. Never before had a woman's name been on a report like this before, so she really broke glass ceilings. In 2015, she received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. She worked on very many programs and projects while she was with NASA, and she was one of the people responsible for NASA's first successful space flight, the first successful program they had. So she was very important and very well respected in her field. So those are my 4 lovely ladies. And that'll be it. I hope you enjoyed.